Going through these experiences, even though we may not like it as we go through it, helps us develop the muscles of resilience. In my teacher's commentary on this third awakening of contentment, he said something that stuck with me. Because a person lacks contentment, the mind follows external conditions. This may be why our attention seems to be kidnapped by so much of the external world. What do we do to stop craving? Contentment. Hence, if we stop craving by being contented with what we have and who we are, then the cycle will naturally stop. Because when that condition ceases to exist, you can't continue the others, and it weakens that cycle of grasping. Sometimes I think that the kind of theistic model that we have is called money theism. We think that money is God. And in an environment that worships money, poverty becomes a source of people feeling ashamed of themselves. Very few people are contented these days. Not by choice, it's by the system. The whole system, the economic system, the engine runs on our desires and our discontentment. And this is the reason why it's so hard to be contented. And this is why we need a community like this to keep reminding ourselves.
So you're right, Venerable. Yeah, I mean, our discontent is being monetized by others. That's why we keep having it. Friends, welcome to episode 30 of Vibe with Venerables. 1 hour of live Dharma and dialogue where you get to talk directly to a respected Venerable. I'm Ming, co-founder of Buddhism-dot-net and your host. Today, we continue to have the very awesome Venerable Dr. Juewei, director of Tien Institute's Humanistic Buddhist Center and the head of program for the Institute's Applied Buddhist Studies and Humanistic Buddhism programs. Today, we will explore the third of 8 realizations of great beings. Venerable Juewei will explain the transformative value of contentment in our lives. I mean, like, we're all used to thinking that ambition is transformative, but contentment can be even more transformative. And Venerable will be showing us how. So Venerable will be speaking for roughly 30 minutes and then answer your questions live. As a reminder, this session will be uploaded or be recorded and then uploaded on the YouTube later. And if you're comfortable doing so, we would like to invite all of you to turn your camera on so that Venerable can see all your lovely faces on her screen. And over to you, my dear Venerable.
Thank you very much, Meng, and auspicious greetings to you and all my Vibe with Venerables friends. Taking a break was refreshing, wasn't it? And restarting on this Valentine's weekend is very lovely.
Yes, we vibe with Venerable and then we vibe with Valentine.
That's right. You get all that opportunity all in one weekend. So
like 2 vibes for the price of 1.
Maybe. So let's me share screen. So once again, I'd like to invite you to take this image of 8 stones stacked on top of one another into our consciousness. Allow this image to make an impression in your minds. Pay attention to the details. And whenever you're ready, please feel free to close your eyes. And just allow my voice to take you through a body scan. Starting with our forehead. Relax. Relax our eyes. Facial muscles. Relax our jaws. Relax our neck muscles. Relax our shoulders. upper arms, elbows, lower arms, wrists, relax the palms of our hands. Relax the back of our hands. Allow our fingers to relax. Let's relax our back. Then our torso. But still keeping a straight back, but not stiff. Relax our hips and our thigh muscles. Relax our knees. Relax our calf muscles. Relax our ankles. Let's relax our feet and our toes. Let's honor every part of our body, sending it lots of love. They have served us well. And when you are ready, let's gently place our attention on the tip of our nose. And without any effort, let's just observe every in-breath and out-breath for the next few moments. And now, if you can, recall the image of the 8 stones stacked on one another. How many colors or shades of colors do you recall? What is the texture of each stone? Do you recall the water and the waves in the background? How about the sky? Or anything else in the foreground? There is no need to struggle. Simply allow the image to return to your consciousness in whatever way it likes to present itself. And when you are ready, please feel free to open your eyes and look at the image again. How different was your mental image from this one on the screen? I will return to this image on our final session. In the meantime, let's leave the mystery alone and get on with today's session. So since we've taken a 2-week break, I thought I'll take some time to perhaps go through what we have done in the past 2 weeks. So during our second session together, you shared with me that you have certain learning intentions, and I've grouped them into these 4 big categories. First, on learning and wisdom, then on personal transformation, and practical application or daily life application of the Sutra's teachings, and also community connection, whereby you wish to share your learning with your community. These are all excellent learning intentions, and hence I am resharing them now to ensure that throughout the upcoming 50 minutes, we can be more intentional in this space. I'd like to now begin with a quick poll to get us all started. So in a minute or in a few moments, you'll receive a poll that asks you what you think of the following statements. Please do not overthink. These just take your immediate reaction and start answering those questions. Go according to your intuition. You may begin now. Please do not worry, there are no right or wrong answers, just whatever comes to mind is very good. So we've got about 22 people who have responded. We're seeing that most people are finding that life is rather messy with all these unexpected challenges. And 95% saying that sharing our struggles can lighten our burdens. That's great. And wow, many people recognize too that our shared experiences helps us connect with one another, and that life's messiness definitely can lead to unexpected growth and resilience. 100% of you agree with that. So that's great. I am going to just stop the poll now and stop the sharing of results so we can get back. So let's get back to the presentation. So I'll pull those results in a little while as I go through the day. But let's do a little bit of revision, like I said before. In the first episode, I introduced my latest definition of humanistic Buddhism as together we suffer, together we awaken, and together we serve. And through this sutra on the 8 realizations of great beings, I would like to suggest that we co-suffer, we co-awaken, and we co-serve. That is, we cannot do this without one another. The poll earlier, I hope, testifies to first, the messiness of life and how communities can be helpful. Just when we think that we got our lives sorted, something unexpected arrives at our doorstep. Thank goodness that research indicates that expressing our feelings and thoughts to others, our struggles can then lead to some emotional release. This process is often referred to as catharsis, and it can help individuals process their emotions and reduce psychological distress. Sharing struggles can foster connections with others who may have had similar experiences. And so this sense of community can enhance feelings of belonging and support, reinforcing the idea that we are not alone in our struggles. And hence this togetherness, this core part of Buddhism is so important to us. And certainly, discussing our challenges openly can help us learn coping strategies from others. And so I hope that this Vibe with Venerables community is that safe space for such an exchange of strategies and to recognize that we are not alone. So this sutra on the 8 realizations of great beings helps us to reflect on what it means to co-awaken and co-serve. It introduces the ideal called Bodhisattva, or the great being. The Bodhisattva develops their mind while engaging with the world to diminish the suffering of others. by developing one's mind. Part of it is awakening. And part of it is working on some important mental muscles. So for those of you who have been to the gym to develop your muscles, you know that those muscles come from discipline and perseverance, and also going through some pain and struggles. And perhaps that's why 100% of you recognize that going through these experiences, even though we may not like it as we go through it, helps us develop the muscles of resilience. So it is with our mental muscles. The best way to develop those muscles will be through people. People who are unpredictable and sometimes quite challenging to deal with. But also, that experience is often the most challenging, or rather the most rewarding. So those of you who are parents, you probably know that, how your children and working with your children, accompanying your children through their growth process is such a rewarding but challenging process. So for the Bodhisattva, who is ready to start on the journey, this sutra on the 8 realizations of great beings offers 2 important awakenings to start. First, the awakening that the nature of all things that we know is impermanence or transient. Whether we're talking about this planet Earth, whether we are talking about our country, our communities, our loved ones, and every part of ourselves, they are all impermanent. That is, they are subject to change. When I learned about it many years ago or decades ago, it's kind of a rude awakening for me because I've always been taught otherwise. I've been taught to plan strategies. In fact, I was a certified project manager. I was taught to attain goals through management by objectives, as though those objectives are permanent. So that was my first rude awakening when I learned about impermanence being the true nature of all things. The second awakening is an even ruder shock for me. I have been conditioned to think of thriving as having lots of money to buy my own property, to wear brand name clothes, to go on expensive holiday trips. And it's only in Buddhism that I realize that these desires are only leading me to want more, and even worse. Those very desires are causing me to become who I will become, and that is not whom I really want to be in the future. So these rude awakenings in the first 2 parts, the first 2 or the first 25% of this sutra are part of my journey. But I also realize that they are quite true. Have you ever wondered why we doom scroll or social media scroll for those of you who do use a mobile device and use it quite frequently? Doom scrolling by definition is about negative content. We are drawn to a lot of negative content in news or in our social media feed. But maybe even if you're not drawn to negative content, perhaps you may be drawn to various news about your community and your family. Or have you thought of how you feel when you are maybe away from your mobile phone for a day or 2 because you went on retreat? It is perhaps at a time that we may reflect on what we are missing. For example, social media and Gen AI, they are perfect for recognizing impermanence. You will notice that we get different posts each time we sign in to our social media account. And even when entering the same prompt, you get different answers from Gen AI. in addition to doom scrolling, generally is also a reflection and could be a reflection on our awareness of the fleeting nature of life and therefore our natural attraction to negative news. Also, we are now more aware of the influx of information compared to a decade ago. And this constant influx of new information creates a false sense of urgency, making it difficult to stop scrolling. Why? The fear of missing out, or FOMO. We become attached to a desire for the latest information. And unfortunately, this desire for information results in overload rather than reassurance that we were seeking. In other words, suffering. And in other words, messiness. So now that we are aware of these two awakenings, what can we do? So let's recite the Sutra of the 8 realizations of great beings together. For all disciples of the Buddha, each morning and night, recite with a sincere mind these 8 realizations of a bodhisattva. First, realize that this world is impermanent and that nations are dangerous and fragile. The 4 great elements lead to suffering and are empty, and the 5 aggregates are without a self. All things arise, cease, change, and become different. They are illusory, not real, and cannot be controlled. The mind is the source of unwholesomeness, and the body is a gathering of wrongdoings. Contemplate this, and you will gradually turn away from the cycle of birth and death. Second, realize that more desire causes suffering. The weariness of the cycle of birth and death arises from greed and desire. Lessen desire, and be without any wishes, and the body and mind will be at ease. Third, realize that the mind cannot be satisfied, but only seeks more, increasing its wrongdoing and unwholesomeness. Bodhisattvas are not like this. They are always satisfied with what they have, is peaceful in poverty, and upholds the way. Wisdom is their only concern. Think back to the messiness of your life. What does this third awakening of contentment mean to you? Especially following the first 2 awakenings on impermanence and desires, or rather the attachment to desires. Please feel free to post your thoughts in the chat stream. And if you agree with what others already say in the chat stream, please feel free to add a reaction. The chat stream is yours. Thank you, Angie, for mentioning that really this world rewards success, and success sometimes is defined by wealth, and poverty leads us down a different path. That awareness is extremely important, and we will touch on that later. There are also comments around wants and desires leading to suffering, and a true Buddhist understands that. Well, the third awakening leads some to think about non-self. That's true. Desires can never be satisfied. That was what we covered in our second awakening. Yes. The monkey mind indeed wanders without focus, always seeking new stimulation. That's so true. And a great recognition that contentment can be fleeting as well. And I think so many of us are now recognizing the source of our suffering. And yes, on acceptance, that's great. And so much insight too in in the chat. I think we can learn so much from one another. Thank you very much for your insights. Please keep posting in the chat while I continue to share my thoughts. In my teacher's commentary on this third awakening of contentment, he said something that stuck with me. And I quote, "Because a person lacks contentment, the mind follows external conditions," unquote. This may be why our attention seems to be kidnapped by so much of the external world. So let me try to return to the most basic of Buddhist teachings to explain what I believe to be behind Venerable Master Xing Yun's teaching. I'm sorry for the small font on this. I will talk through it so you don't have to struggle to see it on your tiny Zoom tile. So let me share with you a very important early Buddhist teaching. According to the sutras, Prince Siddhartha became the Buddha when he saw the reason for sentient beings being trapped in this endless cycle of rebirth. And that he called it the dependent origination, or Pratītyasamutpāda. He realized that ignorance is the root cause of our endless transmigration across lives. As a result of ignorance, we have karmic mental formations of body, speech, and mind. These mental formations result in consciousness. The consciousnesses result in name and form, or what is commonly known as mind and body. Having mind and body conditions the 6 sense bases, which in turn result in contact. Contact results in feelings and sensations. And due to our feelings and sensations, we get craving. Now, craving is extremely important. It's the first circle in the green loop, and we'll come back to craving in a little while. And once craving kicks in, we get clinging or attachment. And clinging is the cause of becoming. And of course, with becoming, we get future birth, or what we call rebirth, followed by aging and death. And with that, the new life begins. So this is the inevitable cycle of birth and death that the Buddha was awakened to. Remember that the Buddha, or rather the Prince Siddhartha, left home in order to find a solution to terminate this endless cycle of birth and death that's known as samsara. So that is his solution, or his formula for getting out of birth and death. So if we review this cycle in the form of our social media scrolling, we can say that our ignorance of the way social media works causes us to create the mental formation of, I'm afraid of missing out on what others are doing, and so I should be on social media. This karmic energy causes us to have that seed in our consciousness. It results in us opening a social media account that bears our name and perhaps even our photo. It serves as our eyes and ears into the world. With that contact, we start seeing the posts of our friends. And these posts generate a feeling of proximity with them, and perhaps even a slight sense of envy. We may put an emoji every now and then to a few of the posts. Now, we may start to crave for more information so that we can feel connected to our friends. And so we start to cling to this social media identity as the quote-unquote me. We become that identity, thinking that is really who I am. And of course, that leads to all kinds of suffering that you may be familiar with. And this is perhaps why my teacher talks about the mind following external conditions. So do note that the first link under past causes, which is in blue, the first link is ignorance. And notice that the first link, which is under present causes in green, is clinging. So ignorance and craving, okay? These two are extremely important because in Buddhism, the belief is that, or the teaching is that the root cause of our suffering is ignorance. Ignorance of the true nature of our being and becoming as illustrated in this cycle. So the best places to cut the cycle of dependency is, of course, in the cause. The effects are too late. And among the causes, of course, you start at the beginning of the cause. And that is why ignorance and craving are the 2 points of intervention. So, what do we do to stop craving? One good way, contentment. Hence, if we stop craving by being contented with what we have and who we are, then the cycle will naturally stop. Because when that condition ceases to exist, you can't continue the others. And it weakens that cycle of grasping. And I know that because I'm hardly on social media, but I'm aware of the magnetic draw. So fortunately, I do not need social media for validation, and I have little fear of missing out. In fact, I'm actually hoping to go unnoticed as much as possible. So contentment. Why is contentment the key to addressing craving and its role in the cycle of suffering? Contentment fosters a sense of intrinsic satisfaction that is not reliant on external factors, such as social media likes or material possessions. And if we can be even contented in poverty, that is a very high level of contentment. This intrinsic satisfaction then is stable, it's enduring, and it's much more so than the fleeting pleasure derived from fulfilling cravings. By cultivating contentment, individuals build resilience against the dissatisfaction that often arises from unmet cravings, leading to a more stable emotional state. If craving is diminished through contentment, the subsequent links of becoming, birth, aging, and death will then be disrupted, and therefore the entire cycle of dependent origination will also be disrupted. That loosened grip will help us to cultivate mindfulness and to become aware of our thoughts and feelings without getting swept away by cravings. This awareness is key in recognizing the triggers of craving, particularly in behaviors such as social media scrolling. So you see the cycle now operates in the opposite direction. Instead of ignorance, now we can move towards wisdom through this cycle. Hence, we can be awakened and realize that the mind cannot be satisfied, but only seeks more, increasing its wrongdoing and unwholesomeness in that cycle of dependent origination. Bodhisattvas are not like this. They are always contented with what they have. They are peaceful, even in poverty, and upholds the way. Wisdom is their only concern, not material success. And hence, they will reverse the cycle of dependent origination by moving towards wisdom, by disrupting at that point of craving with the virtue of contentment. So voila, here we have it. For the Bodhisattva who is ready to start on their journey, this sutra on the 8 realizations of great beings allows us to wake up from the endless cycle of suffering. First, we wake up to the true nature of all things we know as impermanent. Whether this planet Earth, our country, our communities, our loved ones, and all parts of ourselves, we let them go when we don't have the cause to be attached to them. The second awakening is that our desires are insatiable and only will lead us to want more and more. And the hope is to understand the crux of the Buddhist teaching, dependent origination. And once we do that, we can break that cycle caused by craving with contentment and by seeking wisdom to reduce our ignorance. So these are 2 important causes at the past and the present part of this cycle. So I hope that today's class matches nicely with your learning intentions of learning and wisdom, with personal transformation and practical application. So with that, I like to welcome your insights or questions for discussion, either on screen or through the chat. If you would prefer not to speak on screen, just don't raise your hand. We will not call you. But if you do raise your digital or manual hand, someone will give you the opportunity to unmute and share your thoughts. Remember, you don't have to ask a question. You can answer somebody else's question or share an insight. That would be such a gift. So back to you, Meng.
Thank you, dear Venerable. Okay, let's take a moment to take a breath so we can absorb the teachings. And reflect on what we just learned and how it relates to our lives. Thank you so much, my friends. So let's begin our discussion. As Venerable said, if you have any questions or reflections or want to answer somebody's question, please just use the hand-raising function on Zoom and we will invite you to unmute yourself. So Venerable, there's something you said earlier that that was really important and important enough for me to reiterate, which is that ignorance and craving are 2 points of intervention. Right. So in order to break this cycle of suffering, you can break either craving or ignorance. And the Buddha in the 4 Noble Truths, he highlighted craving because that was his first lecture. And the reason was exactly as you said, it's because it's a present moment cause. And if you can hit any point, this is the highest return on investment because it's happening right now. You can do it right now. And there's something else which is very important, which is not reflected in that cycle, but the Buddha talked about it in the different sutta, in the different lecture, which is that there's an almost direct relationship between craving and ignorance. And the 2 links, there's the one link between them, which is the 5 hindrances. So craving causes the 5 hindrances, right? It causes you to have greed, hatred, and so on, right? It causes your mind to be clouded. And because of that, the 5 hindrances causes ignorance. And therefore, if you reduce craving, you can almost, if you can reduce craving, you directly reduce the 5 hindrances, and that directly reduces ignorance. So it's just that one thing alone, you can begin to break the cycle already. So anything you practice, anything that the Venerable taught today, that you practice every little bit helps to break that cycle of ignorance. So with that, Venerable, I want to highlight a question that was asked on chat, which I found it to be a very important question. How to be satisfied in poverty?
I know, because a lot of times we all feel that we are less than others. And in a world that I guess, that sometimes I think that the kind of theistic model that we have is called money theism. We think that money is God. And in an environment that worships money, poverty becomes a source of, I guess, people feeling ashamed of themselves. And of course, there are fewer opportunities than others. But what is the life's project? It's life's project. What do you consider success? First of all, why do we feel poor? We feel poor because we compare with others. And that is the problem, isn't it? When we start comparing with others, there's always somebody better than us. There's always somebody worse than us. I was in Bhutan about 2 to 3 years ago, and the community is so beautiful. It's just so beautiful. And we have many Bhutanese students here. And I remembered one Bhutanese student asking me, after he returned from Sydney, why is it that in such a rich country like Australia, there are homeless people? In Bhutan, they will never allow anyone to sleep on the streets.
Mm-hmm.
So what's really more important to us? In poverty, there's so much community. There is so much resilience and strength. And I think I've been to many countries that may be technically very low in GDP, but I can see their humanity indicators being so high up. So no, I tend to think that, and I also see many rich people who are so poor at heart.
Mm.
So which do you want to be?
Yeah, the poorest people I've ever met are the rich people.
Yeah, and you have met many of them, so
Yes.
I'm sure many.
Yes, thank you. Yes, that's about Bhutan. There's one more thing, one more factor involved, which is I found fascinating, which is that if you ask the king, His Majesty the king for land, he will give you land. So if you are poor, like if your father has multiple sons, one son inherit land, the other son works in civil service, whatever, then you are the son with no land and no job. What do? You ask a king for land, and the king will give you a piece of land as close to your father as possible. So there's family cohesion, which allows you to support yourself. So there's a dynamic there that's fascinating, and they can do that because the king technically owns all the land. So there's this social contract where everybody can sustain themselves, which I found fascinating.
That's right. And I want to also respond to many of the comments in the chat around your monkey mind, right? There were a few monkey minds around. Mine too. And that's why I find, of course.
Add to Venerable?
Of course. Yes, mine too, because my mind is like a broken down vending machine. I've got so many things on my plate. It just has to, I know I can't multitask, but I start worrying and getting anxious about all the things that I can't finish. I mean, that's a very natural thing. However, I'm very grateful for my practice of mindfulness. I'm so grateful that in mindfulness, it has taught me to just settle and just watch those thoughts. That means I don't have to react to it. I can let that monkey mind filled with these broken down vending machine thoughts just come. Just let it come, let it go. Let it come, let it go. And slowly, the mind will settle. And I find myself, less bouncy as that monkey. And therefore, as I settle, I rest and I find so much peace in that mind, or rather that period in between, that silence in between thoughts. And being contented to when the mind is very anxious, and also being contented to when the mind is silent. I believe that is a very important teaching for me in my practice, to be able to be aware of that monkey mind. So congratulations to everyone who is very aware of your monkey minds and the struggles. Congratulations to those of you who recognize the messiness of life. It's only with that we can wake up and start our practice and find value in our practice.
So, Venerable, let me just clarify what I just said because it sounds really important and it's practical, which is if you have monkey mind, what you do is just watch it. So don't try to like suppress it, don't stop monkeying around. No, just watch it. And through watching it with kindness, generosity, openness, by just watching it, being acknowledging it, eventually the monkey will like, okay, I play enough, I rest, right? So there is a little bit of settling. And so I think that was your first point you were making. It was really important. I think the second point you were making also, during the monkeyness, it's not always monkeying. There are parts where the mind is less monkeying, it's calmer. And just when you're watching your mind, watch for those things. And when they happen, just celebrate them. Be in that. And that would calm the mind down.
Rest in it. Just settle in it. Rest in it. And that is part of that cycle of the dependent origination cycle. So you don't crave for anything, don't follow anything, don't ruminate, essentially.
Right. So yeah. So that's I think in important practical advice for everybody. If you experience monkey mind, start by watching it with kindness, openness, generosity, and just rest in places where that allows you to rest. And it's something you can practice like today.
I think, but you only can do that if you have a practice of mindfulness, though.
So true.
That habitual, the habit that we build up is important. If we don't have that habit, we get anxious instead because we follow. It's very natural to grasp, right? Because when that thought comes up, you want to cling. That's the next thing. And then you become, and then it comes around again. So that is the natural tendency. Unless we have a practice, it's not easy to place a pause on the monkey.
Okay, so that is the other piece. Thank you, Venerable. So let's as and when we can, always practice mindfulness. And mindfulness means just watching the body as we go, like every day.
Because a lot of times we are not contented with the anxiety.
Right.
And when we are not contented with the anxiety, we want to suppress it. And that is when trouble starts. So when we sit in meditation, it's not trying to stop thoughts, at least not in my school. It's not to stop thoughts. It's not possible anyway. The more you try to stop it, the more it tries to bounce out. But it's only through watching it that it has no power.
Yes.
Right? The more you press, the more power it has.
Yes. Yes, there are two beautiful analogies. One is the snow globe, right? The shaking of snow globe. That's why it's always agitated. So the moment you stop shaking, just settle it down. Just by resting it, eventually it settles down, eventually it comes down. So by merely resting the mind, eventually it settles. So that's one analogy. The other analogy is the analogy of water. It starts with a raging waterfall. But as you watch it, it becomes a fast-flowing river. And it becomes a slow-moving stream. And it becomes a calm lake. Just naturally. So all you do is practice mindfulness and just watch the process as it unfolds.
Yeah, that's right. But
how
many of us can actually just sit and watch? We
That's
all want to do something. Instead of being a human being, we want to be a human doing. We always want to do something. Yes. Maybe it's time to sit back and ask ourselves why.
Good point. Thank you. Venerable, there's a question on chat stream that is relevant to what we just talked about. This person asked, in this phrase, body is unwholesome or something. So this person is not clear about the exact phrase, but body is unwholesome. But in meditation, there is focus on the breath and body, which is for me a way to wholesomeness and mindfulness. I would like to clarify on this phrase. Thank you.
What body? You said, okay, there's the body that's unwholesome. And what body do we focus on? I'm sorry.
This person said, but in meditation, when there is focus on the breath and the body, which is for me a wholesome, which is for me a way to wholesomeness and mindfulness. So I think the issue is
okay,
yes,
the body
to
being
this.
unwholesome, but yet
Yes.
we focus on it.
Yes.
We are going to duality thinking again. So what happens is that there's a context to speaking about the unwholesomeness of the body, and there's a context around when we meditate on the body. We meditate on the body because that's what we have. And that's the easiest thing we do. Plus, in my school, the Chan school, we can't get straight into regulating our mind without first relaxing the body and regulating our breath. Until those are settled, then can we even touch on the minds. The vipassana comes later. So there's a need to work with this body. Plus, this body is a sentient being, or rather as many sentient beings. Just think of the microbes that are in our guts, right? In order to keep us alive. By being just aware of this body, the muscles, and every part, how it's composed, helps us to be aware of impermanence and non-self. So this body itself can be an object of contemplation. Recognizing its unwholesomeness is to help us not get too attached to it. So what happens when we become so attached to it that we say we have to give it lots of expensive clothes, we've got to give it a lot more than it actually needs. So it's practicing that middle way with the body. And the body is a great device to help us with the middle way.
So neither craving nor aversion towards the body, correct?
Yeah, that's right. And is it aversion to the body is a form of clinging too?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes.
Good point. Middle way.
Yes.
Thank you. So much insights here. This is wonderful.
Okay, Venerable, I think we have time for one more question. Again, I'm going to pick from the chat stream because there's so many. And these are two questions I'm going to basically they're related. So I'll just ask them both. One person asks, I struggle with contentment. So how do I do it? And the other person asks, how does one cease craving?
How does one cease craving is the subject of today's talk, right?
Yes.
So, and I agree, contentment is not easy. That's why it is an awakening. It needs practice. And you should wait for the fourth awakening when it tells us that we have to persevere. It requires diligence. It requires effort. So contentment doesn't come by itself. It requires effort. Because we're trying to break a karmic cycle, a habitual tendency. Very few people are contented these days, not by choice, it's by the system. The whole system, the economic system, the engine runs on our desires and our discontentment. And this is the reason why it's so hard to be contented. And this is why we need a community like this to keep reminding ourselves and to come back again to this community to learn why. So what I'm trying to do in the presentation earlier is explain to you the theory behind it. Why? So the Buddhist perspective and the Buddhist teaching. But the practice itself, now that you're woken up, has to come through service in the community. It has to come through your own personal practice. And yes, that's a big thing to do, perhaps next week.
That's right. So come next week, don't miss it. So you're right, Venerable. Yeah, I mean our discontent is being monetized by others. That's why we keep having it. Oh, so I want to maybe share something before we end, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So because earlier you talked about comparison, right? I mean the reason we are also always discontented because we're always comparing.
Yes.
So in the scheme of using poison as medicine, I want to suggest a way that I use comparison as a way to become more contented. And the way to do that is imagine not that long ago, like during my grandparents' time, and maybe one generation before that, everybody was poor, right? Food was very expensive. Just to eat, I mean, you do like 30% or whatever of your wages go to just food alone. So imagine living during that period, which is like most of humanity, most of history. You tell yourself, if only I can have food every day, I'll be so happy. Right? And then on top of you, there's a prince or a rich guy, and that guy, he has food every day, and then he just go around, I get to eat every day. And it's like, if I were that guy, I'll be so happy. And then come to modern time, I am that guy. I have food every day, whenever I want. Right? And I mean, like, I have water. I mean, it's like again back to imagine if I have water anytime I want, I'd be so happy. Now I have water anytime I want. So just compare myself to what I would be 200 years ago. And then I'll say, yeah, I'm so happy now. So that's my suggestion, using the comparison mind as a way to solve the contentment problem. And with that, my friends, Venerable, you have an announcement for us, right?
So if you'd like to join similar communities like this Vibe with Venerables community, you're welcome to consider Sunday check-in sessions held every Sunday morning in Australia and Asia, or Saturday evenings in the Americas. Same time, just 30 minutes of Dharma, reflection, and community connection. And finally, the Tien Institute has competitive international scholarships available for postgraduate studies in applied Buddhist studies and humanistic Buddhism. If you plan to nourish yourself with some ecumenical studies, you're most welcome to explore our unique Buddhism-inspired contemplative and critical pedagogies in NTI. And so, with your permission, Ming, let's check out together with this prayer for the people who listen to the Dharma by Venerable Master Xing Yun. O great compassionate Buddha, please guide us in understanding cause and effect and karmic retribution clearly. Please guide us in exalting loving kindness, compassion, and equanimity. Please guide us in respectfully upholding the 5 precepts and the 10 wholesome conducts. Please guide us in carrying out the 6 paramitas. We hope to transfer the merits of listening to the Buddha's teachings to all beings in the Dharma realms. May we all seek and realize supreme enlightenment. O great compassionate Buddha, please accept our sincerest prayer. O great compassionate Buddha, please accept our sincerest prayer. Finally, it leaves me to wish you all a very happy Valentine's weekend, cherishing everyone you love and those who love you. And of course, doing so without unreasonable attachments. Thank you.
Thank you. Sanzai, Sanzai, Sanzai. My friends, please all bow to our teacher. Thank you, Venerable, for being with us today. Friends, this recording will be uploaded onto onto our Buddhism-dot-net YouTube channel. Like, subscribe, tell all your friends. It matters to us. So if you're inspired to practice dana or generosity towards Venerable Juewei, please donate directly to the Tien Institute. We'll be sharing the link by chat and by email. So 2 weeks ago, we had our first After Vibe practice circle. That's like the after party. And it was great. Everybody loved it. This was a gathering for peer sharing, for reflection and exploration of Dharma. So great news. We're going to do another one of those in about 2 weeks. So on the 1st of March for those of you in Asia and 28th February for those of you in USA. Yeah, it's the same time, but different time zones. Yes, strange but true. And it'll be facilitated by our very own Angela and Joseph. So as usual, registration is required, and the link will be sent by chat and by email. And next week, Venerable Juewei will return to teach us about the fourth realization of great beings. Don't miss it. Thank you, my friends.